All right, let's release a new bait. So the bait we're going to be talking about today has a lot of really cool uses and baked in features that we'll dive into in a little bit, but this thing has taken a ton of time and work in order to get this thing right. We basically had to throw away all of our mold making and just bait making in general processes that we had in the past in order to make this bait work. So ton of time, ton of effort went into it, and I can't wait to show you guys. But first, I'm Josh Pladies. I own Clutch Swim Bait Company, and we build and design some of the most bite-getting big bass baits on the planet. And today we're gonna be adding one more bait to our lineup. So let me tell you the story about why I started developing this bait. So I was talking with a BPT angler. Ironically, he's sponsored by a competitor, but still throws our stuff. But I was talking to him and was really trying to get to the fundamental root of why you don't see more swim baits and glide baits in BPT events. Like, you see a bunch of them in the Elite Series, but you don't really see that many in the MLF. And I get it. It's a different format. They're going after different things. But at the same time, like, I want to see swim baits excel in that realm just as much as the Elite Series. So I was like, all right, what's the fundamental, like, main reasons? What would a glide bait need to do in order for guys to start throwing it more on the BPT? And basically, it all boils down to get more bites. A bait needs a higher conversion in order to be effective in that format. So every fish you throw at has a higher likelihood that that fish is gonna bite. So with a glide bait, generally your average size of your bite is a little bit higher, but your quantity is lower. So this bait was kind of a developmental process to figure out how to maintain a really good quality bite, but also increase the overall number of bites you get. So you need to catch 2 to 2.5 pounders. So with that, we created a bait that does that and also really excels in pond fishing formats. So this is the Clutch Micro Boss, coming in at 5.5 inches long and just over 1.25 ounces. It's a tiny little guy, still very, very thin profile. And like its bigger brothers, it's got a very similar swim. The build of it naturally tries to work down as you work it, combating something that we're gonna get into a little bit later called little bait syndrome. This bait fights that like crazy. But as you can see, so that's the Micro Boss. That's a full-size Boss. As you can see, that bait's about as big as the whole head section of the full-size Boss. Compared to the Baby Boss, still considerably smaller. And then compared to the Clutch Eco is still a decent amount bigger than the Micro Boss. But we felt we needed something that had all of the Boss qualities, but in a much smaller package. Something that excels in forward-facing sonar type situations on top of fishing shallow and has that natural pull down as you're working it through the water. What we noticed early on in the prototyping process was that regardless of how small we shrink the Boss down to, it still had that tendency. Like the way the water flows over a Boss, the Boss naturally tries to work down. And that's something that's really critical when you're fishing it over the top of fish and you're looking at it on scope, you're 5, 10, 15 foot down. So that's something that was really critical. So one issue that a lot of little baits run into is they get what I call little bait syndrome. And little bait syndrome all focuses around momentum. And momentum is mass times velocity. When you start going down from a big bait to a little bait, you lose a lot of mass really quick. Like it doesn't take a rocket genius to figure out that this thing has way less mass than this thing. So your momentum's going to be lower on this bait as opposed to this bait. Basically what that all means in non-scientific terms is when this bait's shooting through the water, there's forces acting on this bait. So water resistance, line resistance, gravity, all of those forces are pushing on that bait, preventing it from going wide. So we have to eliminate as many of those forces as possible. And one thing that we figured out is that as that like Boss shape and the Boss work where it kind of naturally trying to pull down, it eliminates a little bit of the line drag. So that line drag is going to be what pulls that bait to the surface and kind of breach the top of the water. Because that bait naturally tries to work down, it overcomes the line drag just a little bit, allows this bait to work more like a traditional bigger glide bait, but in a smaller package. So this bait naturally kind of tries to overcome that little bait syndrome. So another issue that little baits typically run into is when you start adding unnecessary weight. So we want as much weight in the specific spots that we want it in along the bottom. And we want to eliminate as much weight up top as possible. And it just allows the bait to perform better. So one thing that little baits typically are hurt by is a paint and clear coat style process. Because like clear coat is a pretty, it makes a considerable difference on a bait. And the more weight you have up high, that means the less weight you can have down low to maintain that slow rate of fall. And it just makes the bait not perform as well. Like a bare bone little bait is going to outperform a painted and cleared little bait just simply because of the overall weight that's added high up on the bait. So I wanted to eliminate paint and clear coat. And I didn't necessarily want to do what we were doing on the Eco, which is just kind of like shades, make it look as nice as possible. Try to really dial in like little shades that work really well for fish. I wanted something that was a much higher detail, but I wanted that paint baked into the material and be just as durable as that Eco paint scheme. So we developed an entirely new process, and this took a ton of time for us to figure out. I think overall, it was 1.5 to 2 years to really fine tune this process from the time that I was like, all right, I think there's something here to the time of this bait's release. I think it was closer to 2 years, but it took a ton of time to figure out. Several people thought we were crazy and that there was no chance it was going to work. Well, we basically had to redo our entire bait making process. We had to start even from how do we fine tune our mold making in order to get to this point. Like our molds have to be absolutely perfect if this is going to work. Like the margin for error on completing a bait with this style of process is very, very low. But let me kind of tell you a little bit about it. So we figured out how to manufacture a really high detail resin film that gets sucked down into the molds, and because it's resin, when we pour resin in on top of it, it chemically bonds to that resin film, making the paint part of the bait. So all that being said, we're able to do some really cool high detail stuff baked into the bait, so you can take a pair of metal side dikes and beat this thing up like you can in Eco, and the paint's gonna be fine. You're gonna get some hook rash over time, sure, but in terms of durability, this bait's never going to chip, peel, paint's never going to come off. You're never going to have a paint issue because the paint is literally part of the bait. So that's kind of a cool bluegill color we got. We got an awesome crappie. We're able to do some cool shad stuff, like there's gizzard gas. Yeah, it's the paint process that we were able to figure out with this allows us to do so much cool stuff with this bait and just make it at a durability unlike anything else seen in the swim bait world before. So it was a labor of love. I'm so glad we figured it out because I think it makes just a superior product. We were able to eliminate so much extra weight on these baits. I'm sure people are gonna get them painted and cleared. I'm sure they'll work, but in my mind, this bait is optimized for the performance of what we wanted it to do. And because the paint is part of the actual bait, you're gonna notice a couple of these holes on the bottom. They're there for us to suspend the ballast weights in the bottom of it. There's not really any way for us to fill those without having a paint and like sealer, like clear coat over the top of it. So if we put any fill in there, it just immediately wash out, and we didn't really want to affect the color too much on the bottom. So you're gonna see some ballast weight holes on the bottom. All right, what setup do we throw it on? Now please don't throw it on your heavy swim bait setup. A lot of you guys are gonna be like, oh, it's a glide bait, it's big, I wanna throw it on an 8-foot extra heavy. Don't, you're gonna overpower the bait. Yeah, we put some stuff into this bait to try to eliminate little bait syndrome as much as possible, but at the end of the day, this thing only weighs 1.25 ounces. We can only do so much in terms of momentum. So an 8-foot extra heavy with 25-pound fluoro, with a 300 size Tattoola 300, with 7:3 to 1 gear ratio, you're gonna overpower this bait and you're not going to get the most out of it. So what setup do we run? I like throwing it on either a jig rod or a spinnerbait chatterbait rod. Like something that's got some good flex to it, because look, these hooks are small. They're size 2 short shank. And fun little thing behind the hooks, we actually had to get hooks custom made for this bait. We went to BKK and had them manufacture us a Spear 21 treble hook in a size 2, but short shank. We wanted short shank, so that way the hooks never hang on each other. A size 2 regular shank, those hooks would catch, potentially create an issue. We wanted none of that, so we had to buy a lot of them, but we got manufactured Spear 21 treble hooks in a size 2 short shank. And I'm not gonna go into detail about how many of those we had to buy because it was a lot. So we're gonna have quite a few of these in the future. So yeah, we had to custom make a treble hook for it. Anyway, spinnerbait rod, heavy chatterbait rod, 100 to 150 size reel and 7:3 to 1 gear ratio. You can throw 20-pound test on it. It's not gonna overpower it. 15's ideal. Like 15, you're gonna get the most action. 20's fine. 17's a great compromise. So live somewhere between there, 15, 17, 20. So if you're in Texas or Florida and you got a lot of really, really big fish, lean more towards the 20-pound test. If you're like around me in like the Ozarks, Missouri area, 15's fine, 17's fine as well. So that's kind of where I live. I tie direct almost all the time with this. I hardly ever use a snap. I don't know, it just works really well tying direct. Ask me again in a year, I might be throwing it with a little bit more of a snap. Things kind of change over time, but right now, I'm really liking how the bait swims tying direct. So, super bitey glide bait, small little morsel, great for scoping, great for pond fishing, great for those back creeks where there's a bunch of like smallmouth up there and guys are trying to target it with little glide baits. This is a perfect bait for those situations. What's the price on it? So because of the paint process, it has to be a little bit more expensive than the Eco. The technology isn't cheap for this. The labor's not cheap for it. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. So right now the introductory price is going to be 120 bucks, which in terms of big glide baits, it's not bad. Like you're getting a lot of technology and you're getting a really fishy bait for that $120 price tag. So that's where we kind of had to be on it. So yeah, this thing gets absolutely smoked. It's crazy just how many bites we've gotten on this thing. And it comes in a lot of cool colors too. Like that paint process really allows us to expand and really have a ton of SKUs really fast with it. One question that we'll get from time to time is, okay, they're expensive baits. What happens if something happens to my bait? Like what if there's a manufacturer defect? What if I need a new tail in there? And the answer to that question is contact us. My phone number is on the website. You can call me, text me, get a hold of me, and we'll get you taken care of. They're expensive baits. They better come with some good customer service. So that's what we're going to do our best to offer you. So if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns, if you ever have any questions about how to fish big glide baits, get a hold of me and I'm going to try to help you out as much as possible. So with all the time, research and development that went into making this bait, I am super confident that this bait is going to take your fishing to the next level, not just in terms of overall quantity of fish caught, but also the size of fish caught as well. So if you'd like a micro boss, the first ever opportunity that they're going to be available is this coming weekend, January 21st through the 25th, right? No, 22nd through the 25th. At the East Tennessee Fishing Expo in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the first place that these will be available. It seems like we roll out a new bait there every year because the people of Knoxville just love big swim baits. So we come and try to release our new products there every year. So East Tennessee Fishing Expo is going to be the first opportunity. The second opportunity is going to be the New England Fishing Expo in Marlboro. It's basically just outside of Boston the weekend following. So that'll be the 30th through February 1st. So January 30th through February 1st. After that, we'll have a drop or two, and then we've got the Catalina wine mixer, the Bassmaster Classic. We will have a ton of these for the Bassmaster Classic. If you're in the area, if you love bass fishing, come out to the Bassmaster Classic. We will have enough there. I promise you on that. And then long term, this bait is going to go to retail. And based off the process that we've developed with this bait, I'm very confident that we'll be able to hire enough employees to be able to have a team solely focused on developing these baits in the future. And that will allow us to open up the retail side of things. So if you want one of these baits, we want to make sure that you can get one. So by late spring, our plan is to roll these out to retailers. So yeah, that's the Clutch Micro Boss. I'm incredibly excited about this bait, guys, and I'm happy you guys can finally see it. And I'm really excited for you guys to see the paint process that we developed because I take a ton of pride in not just the bait, but the processes that we've developed around this bait to help advance swim bait manufacturing in general. So super, super proud of this. Really happy with my team for helping us figure it out. So yeah, if you'd like one, sign up for the email blast on the website. We hope to see you at some shows this year. Appreciate it, guys. Go catch them.